we've got this incredible network of 200,000 kilometers of public rights of way and footpaths and things, which historically was used for walking between towns and cities. How did we forget that? And how has no one put it into a system before? And so how is what we are doing should not be disruptive? And I'd even say, like, the idea of children playing on streets now would seem as being a bit disruptive, right, compared to parking in cars.
Mm-hmm.
But at what point did it happen that way around? Because actually it's cars that are disrupting children from play, surely. So my notion of what disruptive is isn't necessarily about being chaotic or doing something which is sort of unproductive. It's more saying that some of the current structures need disrupting because they're slightly wrong. During the last two sort of like releases of lockdowns, we saw these sort of like honeypot sites in places like on the top of Snowdon with really high footfall.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, I would argue because actually many people aren't aware of all the places where they potentially could go walking. And so you have these particular places, particularly in like our national parks and some of our AOMBs that attract large numbers of people.
Mm.
If our thinking is right, slowways should actually encourage people to spread out more across the country and make journeys that they wouldn't have otherwise thought. So what that means is there will be more people, maybe like not many more, like a really small number more of people walking, I don't know, in like Shropshire or like, I don't know, part of Birmingham or something that they wouldn't have otherwise have thought of walking there.
Mm-hmm.
But could it potentially, I mean, I say potentially, could potentially take some of the people who would otherwise be on the top of Snowdon and take them somewhere else instead. So I think it will help to redistribute the load, if anything. People can, different sort of minds can get involved. You can get involved in different ways. So some people want to get involved because they want to create routes, others because they want to criticize other people's routes, other people want to just be active, others will want to be creative, others will want to go on journeys to reflect. So something very powerful about the different ways in which people can get involved. You know, sometimes you can do things that add to your story, which aren't necessarily about studying in the traditional way or asking your boss for a work experience opportunity or all those sort of traditional ways of accumulating power in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can just do something enjoyable, which adds to your story, that gives you a different way of looking at the world that helps you move forward. So there's tension in the project between the reality of the world we live in and the world that we want to create. And there's this, I'll answer your question in a roundabout way. An interesting byproduct of the project was we've got this idea that you should be able to walk between these two places. And many people will think that Slowways is a network of just single routes for doing that. But really, Slowways is the idea that you can walk to a neighbouring town or city. And then we're proposing different routes for completing that journey. So actually, that means there might be 5 different routes for going between Beaconsfield and Slough, for example. And one might be more direct, but involve a bit of road walking. Another one might be less direct, but miss out all the styles. So if you're a single parent and you're pushing triplets in a pram, you might be willing to go a kilometre further if you miss. Another route might be far better for people who have other particular mobility requirements. So when the volunteers in the first lockdown were mapping out routes, OS maps don't show you actually how accessible a route might be, and actually most mapping platforms don't do that. So in the next phase of the project, when we ask people to go and walk and test these nearly 7,500 routes, we're going to be asking some people, not everyone, some people who'd like to survey the routes and tell us the number of styles, the steepest gradient, whether it's likely to get very boggy or muddy at particular times of the year. A lot of people are afraid of cows, apparently, one thing we found through our research. So, you know, is there a high level of certainty that it's going to go through a field of cows, or might it be a cow-free route? So the issue of mobility is really important to us. But what I'd say is that it's really complicated, and I'm not sure anyone's done it that well yet. And there's lots of organisations that are trying to do it well. It's almost like the guidance at the moment, for the most part, is either from a land manager's point of view, here's how you design a path for accessibility, or it's guidance which has been created for one or two particular user groups. Maybe they've got a sight impairment, or maybe they use sort of mobility buggies or whatever it might be. But no one yet, and maybe we won't succeed, no one yet has done a very good job of doing something for everybody. And for me, that's as complicated as, right? So you could put a wheelchair symbol on a route to say that a route is wheelchair accessible, right? But what kind of wheelchair have they got? Who are they? And what's their aspirations? So we know of off-road wheelchair groups and individuals who will go up mountains that able-bodied people can't go up to. They'll take their wheelchair through rivers that able-bodied people wouldn't go through.
Wow.
They would get stumped if they came across a stile or a fence or a wall, but they would do just fine, thank you very much, over other kinds of hurdles, especially if they have someone with them. So we're taking, I'll give you a longer answer than what you're expecting, I think, but so we're going to be taking a slightly different way into this than most people would expect in the way that we grade and assess routes, because we want to try and be holistic. We might well fail, but that's what we're trying to do.